Hi, it's Charlie. Welcome back to Partickhill Station. I've been gone quite a while and been different places, as you may have seen, maybe on Facebook or on my Instagram channel. I posted a few things. Anyway, lots of stuff to do, lots of changes happening, new projects, and let's get into showing you what's coming up next. You may recall from an earlier video that I had spoken about doing some experimentation with DCC, and that yes, I do have the Hornby Select controller, but there was a whole story behind that, and also trying to get it powered up because I did not have the plug or the correct barrel connector, and a lot of rigmarole, so to speak, to go through in order to get the right one. And this one works, it does power up, and it's ready to go. So the next thing is the decoder itself. Now, I did show you this one that I purchased at the same time from Hatton's when I bought the Hornby Select. So that's the 4-function locomotive decoder. But I more recently picked up some of these TCS decoders, and you know, it was a decision of which one do I use. Well, I've decided that I'm going to go with this TCS one. And my logic is, right or wrong, I'm going to use it on an old locomotive. And, you know, if things don't go well with it, I don't mind losing out on this one decoder as opposed to using the Hornby one and then that not working after the fact. So let's have a look at what we're going to be working on. So here it is. It's the Old Triang Princess, going back to the 1960s, and you know, I've had it for many years and it still runs. It's got its own chuff chuff audio sound. Not that that matters, because there is no audio component to either of these two decoders. Now, what I've done is I have stripped it down, given it a good clean, oiled it, greased it, and it's running really well. So it's basically ready to go into getting converted to DCC, and I'll just demonstrate how well it actually runs. So there you go. I think it's a good candidate for this experiment. And what I will most likely do is I might take this inner track here and make that a dedicated DCC track for the moment. Now, what I still have to yet get my head around is what type of wiring do I have to do here. Now, it's a relatively small layout, as many of you know, and I was just thinking, well, as I only have these tracks wired up at one location for each, then maybe that will suffice after I do the conversion of the locomotive, but we can discuss that after it's done. So let's just give it a run, and then we'll move on to the... Oh, Let me just fix that part. And we'll get it into the repair shed. Okay, so let's get onto the repair table and we'll get things moving along to DCC. So one of the first things I'm going to do here is I'm going to isolate or insulate this spring from that brush with a little bit of heat shrink tubing. So let's just see if I can slip this on without letting that brush slip away out of place. And there, it's got it in, no problem. So I'll probably shrink that in place, but now that side of the spring is isolated or insulated from that brush. That's a good thing. So some of the tools that we'll require to do this transition from DC to DCC with the Old Triang Princess is we need a soldering iron. So I've got two of them here. One might be better than the other. It's been a while since I've used them. The usual soldering paste, solder itself, cleaner for the tip, some wire cutters and strippers, a precision knife, just a little pair of scissors just in case, some heat shrink tubing if I need it for the decoder or some of the wires that we're going to cut short. The smaller heat shrink tubing which I've already used, and the appropriate wires that we require. So that's sort of everything that we need at this point in time. And now, you know, we've added in that heat shrink tubing to this side of the local to isolate that, otherwise it wouldn't work. So we'll get started. So the next step is to cut these wires. As you see, this one's coming from the brush up and connecting here to that diode, whatever it is. I know it's something to do with it's like a suppressor to stop the interference with the TVs, because in the 60s when you ran these things, you know, all these lines would go across the TV screen. So I'm just going to snip that off. And I'll snip that off too. Yep. And then we'll get it sorted. So here is the data for the decoder. There's the decoder there. So here it tells you the red. Let me just see if you can see that. So the black is for the one rail, the grey is for the motor, The orange is for the positive to the motor, and the red is a positive to the rail. It's simple enough. And here's all the configuration, factory resets, lighting control, if you're going to use lighting, but in this case I'm not. I'm just hoping to get the locomotive to run using DCC. That is a goal. And the interesting thing about it is, you know, when I made a concerted effort to get into the hobby, you know, this Triang Princess was the first one that I'd picked up at a model railway show in Toronto. And it was quite some time after that I found a local group that had a layout and people that knew more about the hobby than I did. And, you know, after attending a couple of model railway shows, I began to notice that there was the odd group that were doing DCC. It was a big mystery at the time, and it continued to be so, because I would buy locomotives that were DC, and, you know, on my layout the points are all manual. It just seemed like too much of an undertaking to put in points, and of course the cost of the points and everything associated with it. And, you know, I got to the point where I've got a fair number of locomotives, all DC, and, you know, I was thinking, wow, it's just going to cost so much to convert them, and plus, you know, it's a bit of a mystery, a black box. But, you know, when you start looking at magazines and watching YouTube videos, you know, it begins to clear up, and doesn't look as unsurmountable as it did in the first instance. So here we are. I decided to jump in and have a go with probably my oldest local, and hopefully all will go well. So yeah, let's move on with this. So the decoder comes in this static or shielding bag, which is a great idea, of course, because these things can get wiped out very easily. So it's insulated, TCS, and it comes in two pieces. Well, I hope you can see that there. I wasn't really paying attention. Well, it's already got some insulating material on the decoder, which is good. Double protection there, and then the wires, at the end of the wire, I've got this little plug system, and if we can do this right, yeah, a little bit of a click there, so I'm assuming all went well. So I guess I need the black, the red, the orange, and the grey is in there somewhere. Yeah, I think that's it. So I've just tied off those wires for the moment. Okay, so I've separated the two groups of wires, the ones I'm not using and the ones that will get connected to the loco. I guess the next thing to do is to cut these back a little bit, possibly, because I don't think we'll need to use the complete length, but I'll check it out first before I start cutting. You know, measure twice, cut once. I think that's how it goes. And then we'll start soldering. So the next step is to cut these wires. As you see, this one's coming from the brush up and connecting here to that diode, whatever it is. I know it's something to do with it's like a suppressor to stop the interference with the TVs, because in the 60s when you ran these things, you know, all these lines would go across the TV screen. So I'm just going to snip that off. And I'll snip that off too. Yep. And then we'll get it sorted. Well, this task now, to cut these wires, I have to be very careful that I don't cut all the way through. Yeah. You don't want to apply too much pressure. And they're too small to use the tool on. There you go. Hope you can see. Let's see if you can see this. There you go. That's exactly what we want to see. So I'll continue to do the rest and then we'll come back. There. Now you can see that the 4 wires have been stripped back, ready for the next part, which is to apply some solder to the ends of the wires here, getting it ready for soldering to the frame and pickups. Delicate work. So my next step is to take some flux and take these 4 wires that I've trimmed back and then I'm going to paste some flux onto them. And hopefully that will be enough to get the solder going. I haven't used the soldering iron for a while, but the light's on and hopefully it will generate enough heat. So I'm going to Yeah, I guess it's working. I just dab a little bit onto the tip. And then I'll get the solder and yeah, try to avoid inhaling. Well, that's good. And then try to do the same with the wires. There you go. That worked okay. Yeah, good. Doesn't seem to matter where you turn your head. Those fumes always make a beeline for your face. So I'm going to apply or connect the grey cable to this brush. But the first thing I want to do is just drop a little bit of solder on there. Or maybe and just be extremely careful. So that seemed to have worked. So let's get this grey cable, grey wire, and see how it works out here ever so gently. Yep, that worked fine. And then I'll take the orange cable, orange wire, and I'll apply it here. But first of all, I need to get rid of I've got to get rid of that piece in there. So I've got the brush and then there's a little clip there, and you have a closer look at this, but yeah, I'll maybe see if I can melt that off a little bit. So I'm just going to try and get that added in there. Yeah, that seemed to have worked. And I can trim that off a little bit. Okay, so the one thing I forgot to do, what did I? No, I never missed anything. All right, that's good. They're on there fairly tightly. I just have to be careful that I don't tug too hard on anything. I'll put some heat shrink on it, and then we'll get the red wire connected there. Okay, so I've got the heat shrink tubing, as you can see, on the red wire. And apply it to the end of that white wire, and then just let's get it lined up so that we get, and push that back a little bit so that I can see it. Yeah, I think that's it. And then we'll get that over the top there, just like that, so that it's nice and secure. And then I'll shrink that down. All that's left is the black, and that's going to go on here. Some sort, I don't know if that's on correctly there, but it's kind of, I should have my magnifying glasses on. No, it didn't seem to take. Sort of trial and error at this point, I'm afraid. Maybe I need to heat this up just a little bit more. So hopefully that will do it. It might be that I have to connect it here. So what I'll do is I'll clip that off, and take a bit of flux and I'll add it on there, right there. And I'll take that black wire and we'll try this. This should work because that's where the original connection was. And there you go. That's done. All right, so next step is to deal with these other wires. So I've just trimmed off these wires here. So that I can take a piece of heat shrink like so, and then take these, I hope you can see this, yeah. Just put them in one at a time so that you're not going to get any short circuits in there. And then I'll just shrink the tubing. Yeah, that's good. And hopefully I don't have to go back in and hopefully I haven't left these too long. Well, the other thing is I need to put some tape around here, but in essence we're done. Now the next step is to get it onto the track and see if it works. Well, I completed the wiring and then I put it on the test track, hooked it up to the Hornby Select controller, and nothing happened. There was no movement. I reset the controller, still no movement. Spoke with Mark at Donegal Dad, got his input, and then moved a couple of wires around, put it back on the track, still no movement. And then when I touched the decoder, it was very, very hot. So I guess I burnt that out, although it doesn't look burnt, but I guess that's what happened. So I sent a note to TCS explaining what had happened and asked basically their opinion, because Mark had said, well, you might have to get a 1 amp decoder. But then when I reread the instructions from TCS, it said that, you know, the continuous rating would be 1.2 to 2 amps. So it might not be a case of not having the correct amperage. Now, bear in mind, I'm not an expert in this, far from it. So I'm guessing as we go along here. And also sent a note to Dave at Scott Rails, because it was Dave that introduced me to TCS, as he had bought a few of them and installed them on some of his DC locos, and everything seemed to go okay. Now, it very well might be that something like this, an Old Triang Princess, isn't conducive to the TCS decoders. And as I explained earlier, I chose to use the TCS just in the event that something went wrong, because I believe they were a bit cheaper than the Hornby digital decoder, the 4-function one, which I purchased at the same time as I purchased the controller. So I'll wait to hear back from TCS and from Dave before I do anything, but I think the exercise will continue, and I will take this one off and install the Hornby controller, and hopefully that will resolve the problem. So next step is to remove these wires and then get the Hornby one on. So that's the next step. Well, I hope you enjoyed that little exercise, albeit unsuccessful. Now, the sharp-eyed ones out there would probably pick up on one or two errors that I might have made. And, you know, if you did, please drop me a note, because it's all about feedback and communication and helping each other. I've not given in yet. Part 2 is in the can, as they say, and you'll be seeing that shortly. In the meantime, you know, this was my first attempt at DCCing an Old Triang Princess, and it was certainly a learning experience, and now I know what's involved, and it'll help me make a decision how far I'm going to go with DCC. There are questions about the TCS decoder itself. Mind you, it might not be faulty. It was possibly an error in my part, but thanks to Bobby at TCS for making the offer to replace the decoder under warranty. Anyway, if you enjoyed this, please remember, give me the big thumbs up, and please do comment. That's what it's all about. And stay tuned for part 2 coming up soon. Bye for now.